Beloved friends, let us come together for a few moments in the quiet recognition that we are not here by accident. There is a reason you are hearing these words at this moment in your life. And it is not because you seek new information. It is because something within you is remembering its own source. Today we turn our attention to 4 simple words spoken by the Master. I and the Father are one. These are not words to be admired, repeated, or analyzed. They are words to be realized. For embedded within them is the entire secret of spiritual life, the whole of healing, the whole of harmony, the whole of supply, peace, and grace unfolds from these 4 words, not as a reward, not as something acquired, but as the revelation of what already is. For centuries, men and women have read these words and believed them to be a statement about Jesus, about his unique relationship to God, about his exceptional nature. But Jesus never claimed exclusivity. He said, "What I say unto you, I say unto all." And so the moment we separate his consciousness from our own, the moment we imagine that his oneness is different from our oneness, we close the very door he opened today. We return to the original intention of those words, not as doctrine, not as belief, not as something distant and untouchable, but as the living truth of your being. When the Master said, I and the Father are one, he was not describing an achievement. He was not describing something earned through effort or attained through years of spiritual discipline. He was describing the nature of reality itself. He was revealing what is true about God and what is true about you. We are not here to make these words true. We are not here to force them or to convince ourselves. We are here to recognize that they have always been true, even when our senses testified otherwise. Think for a moment of the burdens we carry when we believe we are separate from God. We struggle for supply because we believe supply is outside of us. We fear for the body because we believe life is outside of us. We search for love because we believe love is outside of us. We pray to a distant God, hoping that some divine hand will reach across space and time to correct our troubles, and yet the Master offers us 4 words that shatter the illusion of separation. I and the Father are one. If these words are true, and they are, then you are not a being struggling to reach God. You are not a creature pleading for favor. You are not a soul attempting to climb toward the divine. You are the place where the infinite expresses itself. You are the transparency through which God reveals its nature. You are the branch that cannot be separated from the vine, the wave that cannot be separated from the ocean of being. This is why these 4 words change everything, not because they give you power, but because they reveal that you never lacked it. Not because they heal the body, but because they reveal the perfection that was never absent. Not because they make you spiritual, but because they uncover the spirituality that has always been the essence of your life. Let us pause now, not to think, not to analyze, but to become aware in the stillness. Notice the life that is breathing you. Notice the presence that is animating your consciousness. Notice the quiet awareness that is hearing these words. That very presence is the Father, and the witness of this presence, the awareness that knows. It is the I, not 2, but 1. This is all the spiritual truth you will ever need. And the entire journey ahead of us in this teaching is nothing more than the deepening of this recognition, the relaxing into it, the resting in it, the living from it. For now, allow these 4 words to echo gently within you, not as a mantra, but as a remembrance. I and the Father are one. You do not have to force it. You do not have to feel it. You do not have to make it real. You need only recognize that it already is. And as you do, the entire landscape of your life begins to shift, not by your effort, but by the nature of spiritual law itself. Let us continue now, gently, without hurry, for spiritual truth is never grasped by haste. It is revealed in the stillness of our being. We have heard the words, I and the Father are one, and perhaps they sounded beautiful, mystical, inspiring. But today, we must go further than inspiration. We must understand why these words possess the power to heal, to harmonize, and to transform every appearance of discord. First, let us remember something essential: God, Spirit, consciousness. The infinite is the only presence and the only power. There cannot be God and something else. There cannot be spirit and matter acting independently. There cannot be the infinite and a second cause operating against it. This is the foundation of mystical healing. Where there are two, there is conflict. Where there is one, there is peace. The human mind looks upon the world and sees duality. It sees good and evil, health and sickness, abundance and lack, spirit and matter. It imagines a life lived between opposites, constantly pushed and pulled by conditions, but spiritual vision sees reality as it is: one, not two forces, not two powers, not two selves. This is why the Master's words carry healing power. They expose the illusion of separation at the root of every problem. Listen carefully, for this is the crux of the spiritual path. All human suffering, whether physical, emotional, financial, or relational, can be traced to a single belief: the belief that we exist apart from our source. The moment we believe we are separate, fear is born. The moment we believe we are separate, lack appears. The moment we believe we are separate, the body becomes vulnerable. Life becomes uncertain. The world becomes threatening. Separation is the only disease. Oneness is the only healing. This is why these four words, I and the Father are one, do not merely comfort us. They correct the very foundation of our perception. They strike at the root of the world's illusion. They dissolve the belief that stands behind every discordant appearance. But let us be clear, these words are not a formula. They are not magic. They are not used to change outer conditions. They reveal that nothing needs to be changed, because the truth of your being has never been touched by the world of appearances. The disease in the body is not the problem. The fear of being a separated self is the problem. The lack in the bank account is not the problem. The belief that supply exists out there is the problem. All appearance, good or bad, is the mind's interpretation of a world it believes is separate from spirit. But when you recognize that you and the Father are one, you are no longer looking out from that separated mind. You are beholding from spiritual consciousness itself. And in spiritual consciousness, discord has no law to sustain it. It has no substance. It has no reality. It cannot continue. It dissolves, because nothing is left to support the illusion. This is the secret behind spiritual healing. It is not a battle between disease and health. It is not a contest between good and evil. It is simply the disappearance of the belief in separation. When the light is turned on, darkness does not struggle to remain. It simply is no more. In the same way, When you abide, truly abide in the realization of oneness, the shadows of fear, the forms of limitation, the movements of discord lose their seeming power. They fade, not because you fought them, but because your consciousness has risen above the belief that gave them life. This is why these 4 words carry the entire power of healing, not because they heal anything, but because they reveal the truth that nothing needed healing. They show that the Father, the Infinite, the One, is the only life you have, the only mind you have, the only substance of your being. When the branch knows it is one with the vine, it does not struggle for sap, it does not fear the seasons, it does not pray for nourishment, it simply rests in the fact of its oneness, and life flows. So it is with you. The moment you stop trying to reach God and begin to recognize that you are living as the life of God, harmony begins to unfold, not as a miracle, not as a reward, but as the natural activity of oneness realized. For harmony is the nature of God. And if you and the Father are one, harmony is the nature of you. Let us rest with that for a moment quietly, without strain. You are one with the source of all life. You cannot be separate. You have never been separate. You are living this very moment as the expression of the infinite. This is the truth behind all healing. This is the truth behind all spiritual revelation. This is the truth behind the Master's words. I and the Father are one, and because of that, all is well in truth, no matter what the senses proclaim. Let us now go deeper, for it is at this point that many earnest seekers stumble. They hear the truth, they receive it with sincerity, and yet they attempt to hold it by an act of the human mind. This is where the greatest misunderstanding occurs. The human mind, hearing I and the Father are one, immediately tries to believe it, to grasp it, to hold it, to repeat it until it feels real. But, my friends, spiritual truth is never realized through belief. Belief belongs to the human mind, and the human mind is not the instrument that receives spiritual grace. The mind can only believe or disbelieve. It can only accept or reject, but spirit is not attained through acceptance, nor lost through rejection. Spirit is what is eternally, regardless of belief. Belief operates in the realm of duality. Belief always implies its opposite, unbelief. Where there is belief, there is doubt. Where there is faith, there is fear lurking beneath it. This is why Jesus never asked us to believe. He asked us to know. Ye shall know the truth, he said, and the truth shall make you free. Know, not believe. Belief is the effort of the human mind to reach God. Knowing is the recognition that God is already present. This is why so many seekers spend years affirming truth, repeating truth, defending truth, and yet feel no closer to realization. They are trying to force the mind into believing what the spirit already knows. Hear this well. You cannot believe your way into oneness. You cannot affirm your way into God. You cannot convince yourself into unity with the infinite. And the reason is simple. You already are one with God. To try to believe it is to assume you are not. This is the central mistake. Belief begins with the premise that something is lacking and must be affirmed into place. Recognition begins with the premise that all is present and we need only acknowledge it. One begins with fear, the other begins with truth. Many students, discovering these teachings, work tirelessly to believe they are spiritual, to believe they are whole, to believe they are safe, to believe they are supplied. But all such effort quietly reinforces the belief that they are something other than spiritual, other than whole, other than supplied. You do not need to believe that the sun is shining. You simply open the blinds and see. In the same way, you do not need to believe in oneness. You simply become still enough to recognize it. Belief is an activity of the mind. Recognition is the silence of the soul. Belief says, I must hold on to the truth. Recognition says, truth holds me. Belief tries to change the outer world. Recognition reveals the world as it is in spirit. Belief is mental effort. Recognition is spiritual rest. So long as a seeker tries to believe, they remain in the realm of human thought, an endless circle, chasing assurance that never arrives. But the moment the seeker becomes still, the moment the struggle ends, a quiet awareness dawns. I do not need to believe these words. They are true because they describe the nature of being itself. This is the shift from belief to knowing. Think of it this way. If you claim, I believe the ocean is vast, your belief does not add to its vastness. If you stand on the shore and see the endless horizon, belief becomes unnecessary. Likewise, when you touch the inner presence, even once gently, quietly, belief dissolves. You no longer believe God is present. You feel the presence. You no longer believe you are one with the Father. You rest in the oneness. This is the difference between a mental statement and a spiritual realization. A mental statement says, I am one with God. A spiritual realization feels, of course. And so our task is not to strive, not to think, not to convince, but to become receptive, to let the truth reveal itself in silence. Sit quietly for a moment now. Let the mind relax. Let all effort drop away. Do not try to believe anything. Simply notice the awareness that is here. This awareness is not created by you. It is not sustained by you. It is the presence that has always been your life. When you experience that even faintly, you will understand why the Master said, I and the Father are one, not as instruction, but as fact. And you will cease trying to believe it, for the truth will have declared itself from within. This is the beginning of spiritual knowing. It is the shift from seeking to finding, from effort to grace, and it marks the end of the great mistake, the attempt to believe what can only be realized. Let us now turn to the heart of the spiritual life, not the words we speak, not the concepts we understand, but the practice of recognition, the gentle turning within, that Joel Goldsmith called practicing the presence. For truth, when merely heard, remains incomplete. Truth must be realized, and realization comes only in the silence of inner awareness. There is no technique here, no ritual, no mantra, no power in the words themselves. What we engage in is the simplest, most natural turning a shift of attention from the outer world of appearance to the inner world of presence. Let us be very clear. We do not turn within to get something. We do not turn within for healing or for supply or for answers. If we turn within for any purpose, we have already begun from separation. We turn within for one reason only, to recognize the presence that is already here. This turning is soft, effortless, without strain. It is not concentration, not visualization, not imagination. It is simply the quiet acknowledgement that within you, at this very moment, there is a life that is not of your making. Begin gently. Be still for a moment. Become aware of the awareness itself, that which listens, that which observes, that which simply is. This is the presence, not a presence separate from you, but the very core of your being. When you turn to this inner stillness, you are not reaching for God. You are recognizing the truth that God has never been absent. This is what Joel meant when he said, God is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. You do not bring God to you. You do not rise to God. You simply notice the life that is already living you. This is the presence turn. And as you rest here, not thinking, not affirming, not trying to feel anything, a subtle shift begins. The mind grows quiet. The breath softens. The world's urgency loses its grip. And a simple truth reveals itself. I am not alone. I am not separate. I am not a struggling self in a threatening world. There is a presence here. There is a life living itself as me. I and the Father are one. You see, recognition is not created by effort. Recognizing the presence is like recognizing light. You do not turn on the sun, you open your eyes. And so the practice is nothing more than opening the inner eye, the eye that sees beyond appearances, the eye that beholds reality. In this turning, something extraordinary happens, though it may not be felt at once. The sense of personal responsibility begins to dissolve. You begin to realize that you are not the one holding your life together. You are not the one creating supply. You are not the one healing the body. You are not the one navigating circumstances. There is an infinite presence doing all this, and you are the instrument through which it expresses. Rest in this. Recognition is not a doing, it is a letting, a yielding, a quiet surrender into the truth that has always been. Some may say, but I do not feel the presence, and that is all right. Feelings belong to the realm of the senses. Presence is deeper than feeling, deeper than thought, deeper than emotion. It is the ground of being, which remains steady even when the waves of feeling rise and fall. The practice is not to feel God. The practice is to acknowledge God, even a faint acknowledgement, even a silent whisper. I know you are here, though my senses may not yet perceive you, is enough to open the door. Recognition grows with gentle repetition. Not repetition of words, but repetition of turning. Turn within at dawn. Turn within before acting. Turn within when fear arises. Turn within when joy arises. Turn within without reason at all. Each turning deepens the realization that the presence is always here, always the same, always complete, always whole. This recognition is the beginning of spiritual life. It is the beginning of living from the center instead of from the circumference. It is the beginning of grace, and in that grace, healing occurs without effort, harmony unfolds without decision, peace grows without cultivation. For we are no longer living from the human sense of self, but from the one self that lives as all. Let this presence turn be your quiet refuge, a place you visit many times a day, until one day you discover it is not a place you visit at all. It is where you live. Now we come to a sacred moment in our unfolding, when truth begins to take form and experience, not because we force it, not because we demand it, not because we attempt to demonstrate anything, but because realization naturally expresses itself as harmony. When you truly live the words, I and the Father are one, something profound occurs, not suddenly, perhaps not dramatically, but quietly. gently, without fanfare, for spirit moves in stillness, and truth reveals itself without noise. What happens is this: your center of identity shifts. You no longer live as a separate self, struggling to bring God into your affairs. You begin to live as the transparency through which God expresses itself. This is not imagination. This is not positive thinking. This is spiritual fact revealing itself as individual experience. Let us consider the practical unfolding of this shift, for spiritual principle is always practical. 1. Fear loses its authority. The first change that occurs is the dissolution of fear, not because you confront fear, not because you fight it, but because you recognize that the life you are living is not a separate life. Fear is always based upon separation. Fear requires me apart from God, me apart from safety, me apart from support. But when you live from the truth that you and the Father are one, fear has nothing to support it. It cannot survive in the atmosphere of oneness. It simply fades like mist before the morning sun. You awake one day and realize, I am no longer afraid of tomorrow. I am no longer afraid of life, for life itself is living me. 2. Problems stop being central. As the sense of separation dissolves, the urgency of problems dissolves with it. The world may present challenges, financial pressures, bodily symptoms, relational tensions, but they begin to lose their power to define you. You no longer look at problems as conditions to be fixed. You see them as appearances that arise in the realm of the senses. While your true being remains untouched, you respond to life from the center rather than reacting from the circumference. This is why Jesus could sleep in the storm. The storm was real enough to the senses, but not real to his consciousness. So it becomes with you. 3. Harmony begins to reveal itself without effort. As you live from oneness, harmony begins to appear not because you seek it, but because harmony is the natural activity of spiritual awareness. Supply flows not as money alone, but as opportunity, insight, clarity, direction, right action. Healing unfolds not as a miracle, but as the revelation of the body's spiritual essence. Relationships soften not by correcting others, but by recognizing the presence in them. You do not manipulate conditions, you abide in truth, and conditions follow. Joel Goldsmith often said, the outer life is but the picture of the inner state of consciousness. When the inner state is oneness with the infinite, the outer picture reflects its harmony. 4. You stop living life, and life begins living you. This is perhaps the most beautiful change. When you live from separation, life feels like a burden, an endless stream of responsibilities, decisions, and uncertainties. But when you live from oneness, you begin to sense that there is an intelligence directing your way. You find yourself guided. You find yourself supported. You find yourself moved by an inner wisdom that is not personal. Life becomes less about effort and more about flow. Less about planning and more about listening. Less about getting and more about being. And you realize, I am no longer the doer. The Father within doeth the works. 5. The world's hypnosis breaks. As oneness becomes your lived reality, you see through the hypnotic power of the world mind. You stop taking appearances at face value. You stop being impressed by conditions. You stop believing that matter, circumstance, or human authority can determine your life. You begin to see the world as Jesus saw it, as a passing appearance, subject to spiritual law, without power of its own. And in that recognition, you become free. 6. Peace becomes your natural state, not peace that comes from favorable conditions, but peace that remains even when conditions shift. A peace that does not depend on outcomes, a peace that does not depend on others, a peace that arises from realizing, I am never outside the presence. The presence is never outside me. This peace is not felt as an emotion but as a foundation, steady, quiet, unchanging. It is the peace Jesus spoke of when he said, My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. 7. Life aligns with its true order. Everything begins to function according to spiritual law. Right people appear, wrong doors close. Right opportunities unfold, situations rearrange themselves. And the remarkable thing is this: you did not make any of it happen. You did not force it. You did not scheme, control, or manipulate. You simply lived from the truth that you and the Father are one, and life blossomed from that center. As the branch in the vine bears fruit naturally, so the soul, resting in oneness, bears the fruits of the Spirit without labor. This is what happens, not as a promise, not as a technique, but as the natural outcome of living truth. And ye shall know the truth, the Master said, and the truth shall make you free. Not belief, but knowing. Not effort, but recognition. Not struggle, but grace. And so the entire life changes, not because circumstances are fixed, but because consciousness has awakened. Let us now turn to a matter of great importance in the spiritual life, one that every seeker encounters at some point on this path. It is the resistance of the human mind. For as long as we inhabit this world of appearance, we carry with us a mind conditioned by centuries of fear, habit, and belief in separation. And when truth first begins to dawn, the mind does not easily relinquish its patterns. The mind has lived so long in duality that it cannot comprehend oneness. It has been trained to seek safety in externals, to find supply in matter, to locate healing in form. And when you begin to say, I and the Father are one, the mind whispers, impossible. How can that be? This is natural. This is to be expected. The human mind cannot grasp spiritual truth because the human mind itself is the veil that obscures it. Do not fight this resistance. Do not condemn it. Do not fear it. Simply recognize it for what it is, the echo of an old identity dissolving. Let us look gently at the forms this resistance takes, that you may understand it without becoming entangled in it. 1. The mind argues with truth. When you say, I and the Father are one, the mind may reply, but look at your body. Look at your bank account. Look at your circumstances. The mind always points to appearances. It cannot point to truth, for truth is invisible to it. Remember this: the mind has only one teacher appearance. Spirit has only one teacher reality, and the two do not speak the same language. Therefore, when the mind protests, let it protest. Let it speak. Let it offer its arguments. But do not accept its conclusions. Do not descend to its level. Acknowledge silently, I hear the mind's fear, but I rest in the truth behind it. This alone dissolves the argument. 2. The mind demands results. Another form of resistance is impatience. The mind says, I have practiced these truths for 3 days. Why has nothing changed? Why do I not feel different? This impatience comes from the belief that spiritual practice is a method for fixing problems, but truth is never a means to an end. Truth is an end in itself. Recognition is its own reward. When the mind demands results, it is revealing that it still believes in separation. It is I who must achieve. It is I who must improve my condition. But spiritual progress is not measured by how quickly outer conditions change. It is measured by how gently you return to the inner presence, regardless of outer appearance. When impatience arises, simply turn within and say quietly, "Father, thy grace is sufficient," and rest. 3. The mind clings to control. The human mind is accustomed to managing life by effort, planning, and control. When you begin living from oneness, you enter a state where you no longer lean on personal will but on divine guidance. To the mind, this feels like danger. Who will take care of me if I do not control everything? What will happen if I let go? The mind fears surrender because it believes life depends upon it. But the truth is this: the mind has never been in control. Life has always unfolded through a deeper intelligence. Surrender is not losing control. Surrender is recognizing you never had to carry the burden in the first place. 4. The mind resists stillness. Many seekers say, "When I sit in silence, my mind becomes restless. Thoughts increase. Emotions arise. It feels uncomfortable." Yes, because the mind lives in motion, not in stillness. When you enter silence, you enter the realm the mind cannot govern. And so it resists. The mind whispers, "This is too quiet, too empty, too unproductive." But spirit speaks only in silence. Spirit cannot be heard through the noise of thought. Therefore, when restlessness arises, do nothing about it. Simply witness it. Let thoughts pass like clouds. Let emotions rise and fall. Your job is not to quiet the mind. Your job is to recognize that you are not the mind. In this recognition, resistance fades. 5. The mind clings to old identity. Perhaps the deepest resistance is this: the human mind does not want to give up the sense of me. It fears the loss of individuality, the loss of identity, the loss of the separate self it has cherished all these years. But the separate self is a burden. It must defend itself, justify itself, protect itself, improve itself. When you realize I and the Father are one, the old self begins to fade like a shadow before light. The mind cries, "Who will I be without my story, without my fears, without my struggles?" And Spirit answers gently, "You will be what you have always been, the expression of the infinite." Do not resist the fading of the old self. Do not cling to who you once believed yourself to be. Let the old identity dissolve. The true self is waiting. 6. How to meet the mind's resistance. Joel Goldsmith taught that we meet resistance not by fighting it, not by arguing with it, not by replacing it with positive thoughts, but by returning to the presence. In every moment of resistance, do one thing: turn within, become still, acknowledge the presence, say nothing, request nothing, seek nothing. Just rest in the quiet, knowing that the one who lives you is here. Resistance dissolves not through struggle, but through the light of awareness. As darkness cannot remain in the presence of light, so the human mind cannot remain in the presence of realized oneness, and thus every moment of resistance is simply another invitation to return to the truth. I and the Father are one. Nothing can oppose this oneness. Nothing can improve it. Nothing can diminish it. The mind will resist for a time, but the soul recognizes truth the moment it hears it. And truth, once heard, cannot be forgotten. It lives within you now, quietly unfolding. Now let us enter the inner sanctuary of this teaching, the mystery so profound that human language cannot capture it, yet the soul understands it instantly, how healing actually unfolds. For healing is not the act of changing one condition into another. Healing is not the replacement of sickness with health, lack with abundance, fear with courage. Healing is not the manipulation of matter, nor the improvement of the human condition. Healing, in the mystical sense, is the revealing of what has always been spiritually true. It is the lifting of a veil. It is the dissolving of a false belief. It is the recognition of the presence that was never absent. Thus, healing does not begin in the body, nor in the bank account, nor in the circumstances of life. It begins in consciousness, in the inner awareness of truth. Let us explore this revelation gently. 1. Healing begins before the mind notices anything. When you enter the quiet recognition of oneness, when you dwell even for a few moments in the awareness of the presence within, something begins to shift, not in the outer world, but in the inner atmosphere of your being. This shift is subtle. It may not be felt. It may not be associated with any physical sensation. But spirit is working where the senses cannot perceive. Joe Goldsmith often said that healing happens in a moment of silence, a moment in which the human mind yields and the truth of being shines through. In that moment, fear loses its foundation. The belief in separation begins to crack, and spiritual law reasserts itself. This happens quietly, like dawn breaking without sound. 2. The inner realignment precedes outer change to the human sense of life. It may appear that nothing has changed. The symptoms may remain. The bills may still be on the table. The conflict may still be unresolved. But do not be deceived by appearance. In spiritual healing, the outer picture always lags behind the inner realization. As the sense of separation dissolves, the outer world eventually follows, conforming to the new state of consciousness. But this requires no effort, no pleading, no mental struggle. It is as natural as fruit appearing on a tree. Once the root is nourished, the world cannot resist the expression of realized truth. It cannot fail to mirror what consciousness has recognized. But the mirror obeys the inner, not the other way around. 3. Healing is the disappearance of the belief, not the condition. Understand this well. What disappears in healing is not the external condition, but the belief in the condition's reality. You stop believing that disease has power. You stop believing that lack has substance. You stop believing that fear has authority. When the belief dissolves, the appearance loses its support. A shadow on the wall does not need to be removed. You simply remove the object casting the shadow. In the same way, you do not remove sickness. You remove the belief that you live apart from the wholeness of God. You do not remove lack. You remove the belief that supply exists outside of your consciousness. You do not remove fear. You remove the belief that you are a self at risk. When belief dissolves, the appearance has nothing left to stand on. 4. Healing is grace, not human will. Another hallmark of true healing is that it cannot be willed into existence. Human thought, no matter how positive, cannot produce spiritual harmony. Harmony is the nature of God. And if you and the Father are one, Harmony is the nature of you. Healing reveals the harmony already present. This is why Joel Goldsmith insisted, there is no power in the human mind. The human mind can imagine, hope, affirm, but it cannot touch the realm where healing takes place. Healing occurs when the mind yields, when it grows still, when it ceases to interfere. In that holy quiet, the presence that has always been your life shines forth. Grace does the work. Grace restores. Grace reveals. Grace heals. You do nothing but be still. 5. Healing comes not to the person, but to the consciousness. This is a subtle but vital truth. Healing is not something that happens to you. It happens in you as an awakening of your true identity. You may ask, will this heal my body? Yes, but healing the body is a byproduct, not the purpose. The real healing is the dissolving of the false sense of self, the separated self. When you realize the presence as your very life, the body simply reflects that realization. When you realize the infinity of supply, outer provision flows accordingly. When you realize the wholeness of your being, harmony appears in your relationships, but the healing is always the same, the awakening of consciousness to its oneness with God. All else follows. 6. Healing often happens before you notice it. There are times when healing is so quiet, so gentle, that you only realize later that the problem is gone. You look back and say, when did that fear disappear? When did that pain leave? When did that situation resolve? It happened the moment consciousness shifted, even if the senses recognized it later. Truth always precedes perception. This is why Jesus could say, judge not according to appearance. The appearance is always the last to know. 7. Healing is not a miracle, it is the normal activity of truth. Do not think of spiritual healing as something extraordinary. What is extraordinary is the belief in separation. What is natural is the expression of harmony through the one life. When the belief in separation dissolves even briefly, the natural order of spirit asserts itself, just as light naturally fills a darkened room when the blinds are lifted, so truth naturally harmonizes experience. When the veil of separation is removed, healing is the natural consequence of knowing what is real. There is nothing miraculous in it. It is as simple as inevitable, as light displacing darkness. 8. The silent shift becomes a way of living. Over time, the silent shift becomes more frequent, not because you try harder, but because the presence becomes familiar, because the truth feels more real than the appearance, because you have tasted peace, and the soul remembers its own home. Eventually, this shift becomes your dwelling place. You live not as a seeker of truth, but as one who abides in truth, not as a person trying to heal, but as an instrument through which harmony flows, not as a self separate from God, but as the expression of God's own selfhood. And this is healing. This is freedom. This is the Christ consciousness. Jesus lived and revealed. Up to this point, we have spoken of realization, of inner turning, of the silent shift that awakens the truth of our being. But now we come to the essential question. How do we carry this awareness into the movement of daily life? For the spiritual life is not a retreat from the world. It is not a withdrawal from responsibility, activity, or human relationships. It is the quiet recognition that in the midst of all these appearances, there is one presence, one power, one life living. Itself, integrating oneness into daily living, is not about adding practices or creating routines. It is about remembering who you are, remembering the presence Remembering the truth behind the appearance, it is the art of living from center while moving through the circumference. Let us explore how this unfolds gently and naturally. 1. Begin your day in awareness. Before the world touches you, before the phone, the news, the calendar, the tasks, turn within, not for long. Even one moment is enough. In that moment, acknowledge silently, there is a presence here. This presence goes before me. This presence walks with me. This presence is my life. Not as prayer, not as affirmation, but as recognition. This simple acknowledgement aligns the entire day with the truth of being. If you begin in spirit, you will find spirit flowing through each step that follows. 2. Pause briefly throughout the day. This is the heart of continuous practice. Joe Goldsmith taught that the spiritual life is not lived in long meditations, but in frequent, gentle pauses, moments of recognition, where you turn your attention inward for a second or two and remember the presence. These pauses do not interrupt your day. They anchor it. You may be in conversation. Pause inwardly. Father, I know thou art here. You may be walking. Pause inwardly. I walk not alone. You may be handling tasks. Pause inwardly. This activity is governed by divine intelligence. These quiet recognitions gradually become natural, effortless, automatic, as natural as breathing. 3. Bring oneness into action. Spiritual living does not remove you from action. Rather, it transforms the quality of your action. Instead of acting from anxiety, you act from peace. Instead of acting from fear, you act from clarity. Instead of acting from personal will, you act from guidance. This does not make you passive. It makes you available to the wisdom that is already functioning as your life. When you recognize the presence, action becomes the natural expression of that presence. You do not think your way into right action. You listen your way into it. And the guidance comes quietly, without pressure, without strain, without urgency. One step at a time, revealed when needed. 4. See the presence in others. Perhaps the deepest integration is this: seeing the same presence in every individual you meet. This does not mean approving behavior or ignoring discord. It means recognizing that behind every personality, whether gentle or difficult, kind or conflicted, there is the same divine self you know within yourself. This is the basis of true relationship. This is the foundation of healing and interaction. When you meet another through the eyes of oneness, something in them begins to respond, sometimes silently, sometimes invisibly, but always inwardly. You are no longer interacting with a separate person. You are recognizing God as the very substance of their being. And in that recognition, relationship changes. 5. Practice oneness when challenges appear. Do not wait for peaceful moments to remember truth. The real practice begins when circumstances challenge you. When fear arises, pause. When conflict surfaces, pause. When lack appears, pause. When pressure builds, pause. And in that pause, turn within. Only one presence is here. Only one power is here. Only one. Life is acting. This does not change the appearance immediately, but it changes you. And when consciousness shifts, conditions inevitably follow. This is the secret. You do not use truth to fix problems. You recognize truth in the presence of problems, and recognition dissolves the problem's authority. 6. Allow silence to become your companion. As oneness becomes your lived awareness, you will discover moments of spontaneous silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of inner noise. This silence travels with you. It does not depend on where you are. It does not require special conditions. It becomes a living atmosphere, a presence that surrounds and permeates your daily activity. In this silence, you feel guided. You feel carried. You feel supported without effort. Life becomes lighter. Decisions become easier. Relationships become softer. Work becomes an expression rather than a burden. Silence is not something you enter. Silence becomes something you live from. 7. Let the practice become identity with time. Oneness is no longer something you practice. It becomes the ground of your being. You no longer say, I will seek the presence. You feel the presence living you. You no longer say, I will turn within. You find that within is where you dwell. You no longer say, I will remember God. You feel the truth that God is remembering himself as you. This is integration, not an activity, but a state of consciousness. Your life becomes the transparency through which the infinite expresses. Everything changes, not because you sought change, but because you sought presence. And presence changes everything. 8. Continuous practice becomes continuous grace. The more you rest in oneness, the more you sense a quiet rhythm moving through your days, a rhythm not created by you, but revealed to you. You begin to understand what Jesus meant when he said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You live without strain. You act without fear. You walk without worry. You love without effort. This is the Christ consciousness alive as you, not someday, but now. Integration is not something you accomplish. It is something you allow. It is the natural unfolding of a consciousness that has remembered its source. And because the source is infinite, the unfolding never ends. And now, as we come to the close of this unfolding, let us rest together for a moment in the quiet recognition of what has taken root within you. This is not the end of a teaching, nor the conclusion of a lesson, but the beginning of a new foundation. A foundation not built upon belief, nor sustained by effort, but arising from the awareness of oneness. Throughout this journey, one truth has whispered beneath every word. There is a presence within you that has never been absent, a presence that asks nothing, demands nothing, requires nothing of you, a presence that is your very life, the life you have been seeking, the life you have been longing for, the life that has been quietly living you since the beginning. This presence is the foundation, not the body, not the mind, not the personality, not circumstances, not the world, only the presence. It is from this inner foundation that all spiritual living arises. It is from this inner foundation that harmony flows. It is from this inner foundation that healing, supply, guidance, and peace emerge, not as miracles, not as interventions, but as the natural unfolding of truth. Let us look gently at what this foundation means for you now. 1. You are no longer seeking from separation. The old way of seeking, striving for outcomes, Searching for answers, chasing spiritual experiences, falls away. You no longer reach outward for what is already within. You no longer plead with a distant God for what the infinite has already given you as its own expression in this new foundation. Seeking becomes recognition, and recognition becomes living. 2. You are no longer governed by appearance. You have seen that the world, as the senses present it, is not the source of your life. It is not your security. It is not your supply. It is not your peace. Circumstances may arise, but they do not determine your being. Conditions may shift, but they cannot touch your essence. The world may move around you, but it no longer moves you. This is freedom, not freedom from experience, but freedom within experience. 3. You are supported without effort. Perhaps the most profound realization of all is this: you are not carrying your life. Life is carrying you. The burdens you once believed were yours, fear, control, worry, responsibility, begin to dissolve in the light of this understanding. You discover that guidance comes when needed, strength comes when required. Supply flows where consciousness opens. Harmony reveals itself when the belief in separation fades. This is grace, the effortless activity of the infinite through the individual, and grace becomes natural once the foundation is recognized. 4. You live from the center, not the circumference. The world may still present joys and challenges, but you no longer live from reaction. You live from the center of awareness, from the quiet knowing of the presence within. You move through life as one who is grounded, anchored, rooted in the invisible reality that does not change. This is what it means to dwell in the kingdom, not to visit it, but to live from it. 5. You understand that transformation is already unfolding. You may not yet feel complete. You may not yet see outward changes. You may still experience moments of resistance. But do not judge the spiritual process by the timeline of the world. The seed has already been planted. The inner shift has already begun. The recognition has already occurred. Transformation is not an event. It is a dawning. And the dawn is already breaking within you. ***6. Your path forward is simple. Return. Recognize. Rest. ***. From this point on, the spiritual life becomes disarmingly simple. Return to the inner presence. Recognize the truth of oneness. Rest in the awareness that this truth is your life. There is nothing more to seek, nothing more to add, nothing more to force. The foundation has been laid, and the foundation is enough. For once the truth is glimpsed, even briefly, it begins to reveal itself again and again, until it becomes the atmosphere in which you live. 7. The journey ahead is one of unfolding light. As you continue forward from here, do so gently, without expectation, without pressure. The same presence that brought you to this moment will carry you to the next. The same intelligence that opened this recognition will deepen it. The same love that awakened you will guide you. There is nothing to fear and nothing to achieve. Only one life, one presence, one being unfolding as you, and now you know it. Final blessing. Rest. Now, in the quiet acknowledgement of who you are, a transparency through which the infinite reveals itself, a branch of the one vine, a wave of the one ocean, a light of the one light. Let this truth be your foundation. Let this presence be your home. Let this oneness be your life. And as you walk through the days ahead, remember, you and the Father are one. And this is the truth that sets you free.